Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. It is Saturday, the 16th of November, and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. So we've both been out and about, haven't we, Phil? Quite a bit over the past week.
It's been a busy period of time, hasn't it? Yeah, I was at the ASE Business Managers Forum the week before last, which was great, talking to some of the manufacturers and sharing some of the thoughts and insights as to where we expect the market to go. And then I joined up with Grant Thornton on the back of the Insight Report, where we've done 2 roadshows in London and in Manchester, which has been received very positively, with in excess of 50 customers and guests and clients from across various sectors, really, funding, lending, dealers, etc. So it's been a busy few weeks, and I think when we get into the next stage of the show, I think we'll see why it's non-stop at the minute. And you've been busy as well.
I have indeed, yes. I've been with Truss Ford. They invited me to actually host their managers conference. So I was up on stage in full Michael Parkinson mode, if you can believe that. And I was interviewing the Truss Ford board in front of an audience of, it was over 600 managers over the course of 2 days. And that was at the East Midlands Conference Centre up in Nottingham. And this morning, we're actually delighted to welcome a very special guest from that conference. We've got Stuart Foulds, who's CEO and chairman of Truss Ford. Now, Stuart has led the group since 2017, having joined from Pendragon, where he was the managing director of Evans Halshaw. Now, under his leadership, Truss Ford has become the 10th biggest group in the AM 100, with a turnover of £1.7 billion, with dealers spanning the UK from Aberdeen to Northern Ireland and down to the Channel Islands. He's also led its growth with Parts Plus and Ford's multi-brand quick lane fast fit operations. So good morning and welcome to the show, Stuart.
Good morning, guys, and delighted to be with you.
Now, Stuart, perhaps you could start by just outlining some of the main themes of last week's conference.
Yeah, well, it's something that we do obviously annually, and the idea behind it is really to give all managers a full brief on what's happened throughout the year and what we're planning to do for the following year. So it was a great opportunity, and it was a good venue for us. It was the first time we'd used this venue, and the sort of theatre style was excellent. So some of the things that we discussed were our EV strategy for 2020, which is obviously a big topic for all the industry. And Ford, they have a big launch of about 18 electric vehicles, hybrids, semi-hybrids, soft hybrids. That's all sort of coming towards us with the introduction of electric transit in December, and Puma at the beginning of the year. So it's a really exciting times, but it brings its challenges in terms of electrification and the electric charging points, substations and all of that stuff. So we wanted to brief the guys on that. We talked about our investments for 2019, which has been pretty significant because we've spent about £5 million on new assets through the year. And then things like the new initiatives that we've got, such as Parts Plus, Quick Lane, Smart Lab, which is a new brand for us, and then things like our prep and fleet facilities in both Long Marston and Sherburn, which have now expanded significantly, and we now have the ability to store over 10,000 vehicles. And then there was obviously an opportunity to brief colleagues on all other aspects of the business, covering finance, commercial vehicles, HR, and, as I say, parts.
I think there's a lot going on, isn't there? We were talking before the show, Stuart, that it's never a dull day and there's a lot happening. But what would you say has shaped the last 12 months for the business?
Well, we've had a lot of projects on the go through 2019, and I guess it's a big one where the construction and opening of 4 new Ford stores, 16 Parts Plus sites, including 7 hubs, And then the Quick Lane project, which we opened our first one about 6 weeks ago, and the second one is just finished in the past couple of days, with 10 more planned for 2020. The other thing that we've been heavily involved in is used car process, and that is to give consistency across the group, because I think it's like anything, if you've got a consistent approach and you use a rigorous process, and that covers the display of the vehicles, the way they're priced, the way the point of sales attached to the vehicles, how the salesmen greet the customer, all of that process. So we're working very hard to get consistency across the group. And then the other big thing that we've been on a journey with is Trust Ford Now, where we guarantee to deliver the used car, and if it's on the floor, a new car, the same day. And we've just, again, in the past few months, launched the equivalent in the service department with Service Now, which again means a customer can literally drive in without an appointment and have his car or her car serviced within an hour with no appointment.
Now, Stuart, most groups are reining in on their capex, but you're actually bucking the trend. And you mentioned the £5 million investment you've made this year. Over the course of the year, you've made some major property investments, notably around storage and prep facilities in Long Marston and Sherborne. What was the actual thinking behind all this?
Well, in the case of the fleet prep, we had quite a lot of outsourced sites and facilities, and one of the ones that we had a big involvement in was up in Speke, which we came out of, but that wasn't ours. We were effectively renting that. So we've opened a 15-acre site in Sherborne, up in Yorkshire, and that's really to satisfy our fleet customer in the north of England and into Scotland. And then in Long Marston, which is down by Stratford-on-Avon, we've increased that, and we now have 33 acres there. So in total, we've got about 51 acres of storage and prep facilities. And as I said earlier on, that allows us to store 10,000 vehicles. And through these sites, we'll prep in the region of 75,000 vehicles in 2020. So it's a pretty big operation, and it's a sort of one-stop shop. We can do all the prep if it's commercial vehicles, which we're very heavily involved in, all the racking, all the ply lining. We have our own graphics business where we apply the signage to the vehicles, and if need be, wrap the vehicles. So it's a big old operation. So that's been a big spend for us in the year. And then, as I said, we opened 4 Ford stores. We opened one in Cribbs Causeway down in Bristol, followed by 2 in Northern Ireland, one in Newtonards Road and one in Lisburn, and then just fairly recently a Ford store in Staines. Added to that, we've got other sort of projects on the go, and it's really all about bringing the business up to date, making sure it's modern, fit for purpose, and we believe that investing in these businesses will give us the return in the long term, because we are here for the long term. And
on this, Stuart, I mean, you obviously, what was rolled out, and you mentioned earlier, obviously around the conference, the embracing the new Ford all brands fast fit quick lane concepts, and not that you've got enough going on with everything else that you've just been talking about, but what's your plans with the rollout of this? Because that's that's a big system to roll out, obviously across your group.
Yeah, well, Quick Lane is a brand that Ford have very successfully launched and run in the States. I think there's about 2,500 Quick Lanes in the States today, and they've brought the project across to Europe with an intention over the sort of next 3 to 4 or 5 years of having 1,000 Quick Lanes in Europe and the UK. We were asked if we wanted to participate in this. It's a franchised operation, so it's got nothing to do with the Ford Blue Oval. It's a completely separate brand, completely separate franchise. It is not attached and will not be attached to a Ford dealership. So its purpose is to really attract all makes servicing. Very sort of modern, very slick, lovely operation. And as I say, the first one opened in Prestwich a couple of months ago. And we've had our property guys on with the second one, which is in Colchester, and that we literally got the keys for that day before yesterday, with an official opening in probably about a month's time. And then to add to that, we've got another 10 planned in 2020, focusing on the Greater Manchester area and in Essex. And intention really is to get these up and running, and if they get these into success, which there's no reason that they shouldn't, then who knows what else we might do going forward. But it's going to be a national brand. We will be a big player within that.
Now, following on from that, Stuart, you've already mentioned Parts Plus, and you are rolling out the Parts Plus business. There is expansion there, and I understand you're possibly Ford's biggest parts supplier now. So where is that program going?
Yeah, well, Ford changed the way that they wanted to do parts distribution about 18 months ago, and the Parts Plus idea was born. And in essence, again, it's a bit of a franchised operation where Ford, in effect, are the owner of the business. And we, in effect, again, we rent the facility, we rent the people to them, and the delivery, etc., etc. So 12 months ago, we started with one Parts Plus outlet, and it's been pretty hectic. I mean, today we have 16, and that includes 7 hubs which service the Parts Plus network as well. So in terms of our scale, today we're doing about 40% of Ford parts in the UK. And that's probably set to grow as we go into next year. So there's a bit of expansion there. But, the great thing is that these new Parts Plus businesses, the guys who have come to work for us are sort of blown away by the quality of the facility, because parts departments, as you guys know, tend to be the ones that are the poor neighbours. The facilities are usually rubbish, and they're sort of pretty dark and dusty places. Whereas we've got really nice, beautiful facilities with really sort of lovely canteen facilities and meeting rooms and all that. So it's absolute chalk and cheese from the norm. And it's been very, very successful so far.
I get what you say with the parts departments. There's this little thing in the corner, isn't it? And they just they have the mind of parts numbers, and that's live in their little world. But I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of one of these little forgotten things in the corner.
It's like the guys go in when they're 16 and they come out when they're 65.
They do, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. So in terms of the fourth quarter then, bringing this back to home a little bit in terms of what's happening now. So think about the fourth quarter for Trust Ford specifically and the market in general. What are your thoughts around what's happening in what to expect in this fourth quarter, and what are the challenges? And you've got enough opportunities. I think you've definitely got lots of opportunities coming on. But what do you think the sector faces in terms of challenges as we enter sort of 2020?
Well, I think it's like any year, guys. I mean, you sort of hope that one year the year will finish at the end of September, and you can keep what you've made, because October, November are usually pretty tough months, and this quarter is tough. It's tough out there. I talked to a lot of the guys in the trade, and nobody's really talking very much in the way of upbeat. It's just hard. We've got Brexit. This whole Brexit debacle has been massively costly to the industry. If you think back that we were going to leave at the end of March, and that fell apart, and we were stocked up to the gunnels with vehicles, as many dealer groups were, because of the impending threat of tariffs if there was no deal. Then it was going to be October, and of course October's now come and gone, and it hasn't happened, and we're now sort of staring down the barrel of an election with a divide almost between the parties, saying we're going to go for another referendum, and some saying that they're not. The Tories very definitely want to be out. So that's put a huge amount of pressure and uncertainty into the market. And you look at the sort of announcements in the trade press over the past few months on some of the big groups. Challenges, profit warnings. You got Lookers with a profit warning. You got Pendragon with profit warnings. There's lots and lots of profit warnings, and I think it's really hard work. Used car margins are in a bit of a decline, and then to cap it all, we've got the FCA have managed to sort of stick their tuppence worth in, and they're going to have a go at trying to reduce our earnings from F&I. So it's hard. It's this. I think a lot of people think this is an easy business to be in. It isn't. It definitely is not. And we're going through a bit of a recessionary sort of period just now, I think.
Yeah.
So it's batting the hatches down, I think.
Yeah.
Now, finally, Stuart, at the conference, you had Ben's CEO, Zara Ross. She gave a very good presentation, and she announced that Ford is now Trust Ford is now Ben's biggest single fundraiser. Can you tell us how much you've raised this year, and tell us about your breakout for Ben fundraising activities? Because I know that's a major part of what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's very close to my heart. I think it's a very under-resourced and not very well-known charity, but actually it provides fantastic backup to colleagues within the motor industry, and people that are on the benefit of that are hugely impressed and extremely grateful for the support that they get. So this year, we're the biggest contributor, and as it stands today, we're at about £175,000 raised. The biggest chunk of that comes from Breakout for Ben, which is a bit of a mad idea that I had last year, where we sort of laid a challenge down to teams within the company, teams of 4, to set off from Long Marston in a pre-prepped Focus or Transit Tornado to get as far away from Long Marston as they could within 25 hours. So that was a whole load of fun and some amazing results. We had one team who got as far as the tip of Italy within 25 hours. So we went ahead and did it again this year. So in 2018 we raised 112,000. This year we are currently at about 117,500, so improvement on year on year. And it brings together a huge amount of camaraderie amongst the teams within Trust Ford. The atmosphere at the actual drive-away down in Long Marston on the 17th of October was absolutely unbelievable. Just people dressed in fancy dress. And, we had a lot of teams that set off, and the blogs, the Facebook, the Instagram, all these things, it was just absolutely fantastic over that weekend. And our furthest destination, they got as far as somewhere in Serbia, which seems almost impossible, but they did. And so this is now an annual event for us, and this is something I'm absolutely determined that will continue within Trust Ford long after I've retired, and something that will just continue to raise money, raise profile, raise awareness for Ben, but very importantly, it's a great team builder for the company, and everybody in the business is fully supportive of it, and it's just been marvellous, to be honest.
And Stuart, can you share the story with us about the gladiators?
Yeah, well, the guys who won it last year, they got to the very tip of Italy, all dressed in gladiator outfits, and where they landed was actually at a harbour port, and completely mad. One of them held the iPhone camera video on, whilst the 3 others jumped into the harbour to cool down. It was only at that point they realised there was actually no way back out again, so they ended up swimming about a mile before they were able to actually get back ashore. So it's completely crazy. But, it's these things that memories are made of, and that sort of build the story and, I guess, the sort of reputation of this whole sort of charitable event. So it's great, We had one of the teams who actually couldn't pull this off, but their plan was that they had got a consent. The guy had been in the army at some point, had managed to get consent from his boss in the army to actually fly the Focus on a transport plane out as far as Iraq. So that was what they were going to try and do. The problem then occurred that they were then told they couldn't get the car back for about 8 weeks. So that sort of scuppered that idea. I'm not sure they would have won, because it was all to do with the actual mileage, not as the crow flies by Google Maps.
That could hang down a different challenge.
It's a great event.
It's a whole different challenge to it. That
event.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Stuart, it's been an absolute delight having you on this morning. What a way to finish the interview with you, and thanks for sharing your thoughts with us, and good luck with everything you've got on in terms of all these rollouts. You've got a lot happening, but a lot of opportunities, and obviously wish you the good luck with closing this the fourth quarter and the budgets for the years ahead. So it's been a pleasure, Stuart.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Right. So, Phil, should we get on with the rest of the show?
Yeah, to try and follow some of that now.
There was some good stuff there. That was a fascinating interview. So I hope you all enjoyed that. But back to this week's headlines. So we've got dealers adapt to survive by emphasising service and after sales. Consumers become more aware of click-to-buy schemes. Physical dealerships remain important to used car retail. We've actually got some good news, good stories this week, haven't we? There's a bit more upbeat than last week. Car maker websites fail to win test drives for dealer networks. And the final story is ASE reveals the September profitability figures. So a fair bit to cover there.
There is, and we'll try and keep it as brief as possible because we've some fantastic stuff there from Stuart, and I think actually Stuart touches on a few of the points within the news stories interestingly this week, because obviously the first one is in the motortrader.com, and that's on the back of one of the events that we did with Grant Thornton down in London from Cox Automotive, and sharing some of the insights on the what to expect, what 2019's look like, and what to expect in 2020. And some of the points that Motor Trader have picked up on are similar to what Stuart's just been talking about around that needing to adapt and survive. Looking at the service and after sales market for revenues, because new and used cars are under pressure and there's opportunities there. So, and obviously mainly we talked around obviously looking at what to expect in the first quarter of next year. And we were we were speaking before the show and talking about the new and used car market, and there is a lot of challenges. I think my point to the audience at these events was that we've been under a lot of pressure. The market is changing. Dealers are expecting consolidation. We know that. We've seen what's happening in people like Ford, Honda, and other manufacturers. They're changing their strategies and representation within the UK and the partnerships with UK businesses. But I think really, for me, to still, whenever we finish on in terms of the new and used car volumes for 2019, we're still going to put through 10 million, in excess of, give or take 10 million transactions in the UK in new and used. And out of that is businesses that are surviving and earning revenue and activity at different touch points on those new and used vehicles. And I think that's a testament to the sector that it is tough. There is some headwinds that are challenging the sector, but for the dealers, I think one of my messages was that we do expect that the number of dealers will decline, and they will continue to decline going forward in the years to come. But hopefully what will come out of it are more efficient and more profitable businesses as the sales per outlet starts to increase, that they become more efficient in other areas of the business, a bit like the things that Stuart was just talking about before, thinking about that quick fit world and the parts efficiency, and actually thinking that you laughed as well, and I certainly did, because I've had those parts departments in businesses that I've run, that it's kind of this little room in the corner. He's got his numbers in his head, so he can tell you any part number off the top of his head, and they go in there in the morning, come out at night time, and that's it. But that world is changing.
Exactly. Well, as Stuart was saying, that they have a cafe facility there, and I think he said meeting rooms and a nice, bright environment.
Yeah, so I think essentially, the world is changing. I think one of the messages as well that we've the industry and the sector generally has probably evolved quicker in the last 5 to 10 years than it ever has done. But what will happen is create challenges. People will leave the sector, but people will enter the sector as well. But I think we'll become better for it in the long term and more aligned to the consumers. So, it's been a good week so far.
Yeah. Now, the next three stories are all about online. And the first one is from AM Online. And the headline is Consumers Becoming More Aware of Click-to-Buy Schemes. So this is based on the motors.co.uk research. They've got this consumer insight panel. So it's basically feedback from, it's just over 1,000 in-market buyers, and asking them about what they think about click to buy. So the response is that 30% of UK car owners would seriously consider buying their next car online. So drilling into those stats, the appetite for click to buy is strongest amongst men, millennials, and those living in the northeast and southwest of the country. But crucially, the research also found over 3/4 of buyers, so that was 78%, still want to view or test drive a car before making a purchase.
And you can see that happening, can't you? I think it kind of connects with some of the other conversations in the industry around the old omni-channel, that whole online transactional world. And I think it's great insight, isn't it, from Motors there around that actually, it is what the industry is talking about, actually consumers are thinking about, which is good. that the two are connected, isn't it? That the industry is moving in the direction of what consumers are doing.
Yes, but there is still clearly a vital role played by physical sites, as we'll touch in one of the other stories we've got.
No, exactly, and that does move us on. That and this story comes from Startline Motor Finance, and they, as you say, it's a story from Paul Burgess, who we had on the other week on the podcast. And as you say, they're talking about in motortrader.com physical dealerships to remain important to used car retail. And I think you're right. I think it's that there's still a physical business in there. There's still an asset. There's still consumers still want some face-to-face connection and communication. So they've done some research into it, haven't they? And that indicate that although 64.3% of dealers plan to invest in online finance in the next 12 months, 84.2% of dealers believe it's important that a customer visits their showroom.
Yes, and similarly, 55.3% of consumers said they would be happy to buy a car online, while 70.3% would arrange car finance online. So it's showing the importance of online there, but they still want to visit those showrooms.
And it's good. I mean, that is good. I mean, again, not to promote my messaging, but I think one of the messages that we talked about in the last week, and I've been sort of getting out there in the market, that you can't move, you can't fix cars in the cloud. There's this digital world that is taking place, but actually you're dealing with physical assets that need moving and need repairing and things like this. So there is this alignment between the physical and the digital world, and I think the message needs to be that actually they need to work cohesively together in the markets ahead. I think that is key, that you can't have an online digital platform without supporting it with that physical world as well, and they do need to work succinct with each other.
Yeah, and in fact, their findings show that 37% of buyers said having a local dealership was essential, and 51% said it was a nice to have. So, that's well over 80% seeing the need for a physical site. No,
and it's definitely, I think we said the other week with when Paul was on the show, that it would be good when we start to see some of these trends, and we start looking at some of the trends year on year, where we can watch this kind of data and how that moves as the future as they continue with this research.
Yeah. Now, next story, it's an old chestnut really, because it's about test drives, which we do cover On a regular basis. So the headline from AM Online is brands' websites fail to win test drives for dealer networks. So manufacturer websites need to do more to turn car searchers into test drivers and to support their dealer networks. So this particular research from Sophos 3 found that less than 5% of consumers who view the test drive booking page of a car maker's website go on to actually taking to actually go on to take a test drive. So that is an incredibly low figure there, because test drives, they are so easy to organise now. You can book them online, you can book them in the dealership, but the uptake seems to be very low. And what Sophos 3 are pointing out is that maybe stronger messaging from the car manufacturer websites would actually help this process and get potential customers and buyers into cars to test drive them.
Yeah, and they do go on to say about the test drives, can be off-putting to time-starved customers, and that obviously they may not actually trust the process as well, and they talk about that there's where the interactive functions like live video chat can fill in the gap, connecting customers with the dealership online, where they can be given a virtual tour of a car and ask questions directly to the sales executive online, and that's come from Scott Gaines, who's the MD of Sophos 3. So, I mean, what's your thought of that? I mean, you've between the two of us, you're the one that's been through the most recent vehicle purchase experience, and my experience is, test drives do sell cars, and people will laugh at this when they hear it because it's taking back to the old days, but bums in seats sell cars, and that's always the cliche. It's trying to, when I was running businesses, it was, get that customer on a test drive, get them sat in the car, get them experience it, get them to touch and feel it and drive that car, because that will help sell the car. And that was always the key message. But as we're now moving into this digital space and that cohesiveness between the two, as we mentioned previously, but what's your recent experience with it?
Well, I had a good and not so good experience. One of the dealers that I turned up at, I saw the car that I was after, and they had a demonstrator there, but they couldn't offer me a test drive because they had a customer who was due to come in to talk about it was a second viewing of a car, and I got the impression the salesperson was virtually sort of clearing their desk to welcome this next customer rather than facilitate my needs, which included a chat about the car and a test drive. So hugely disappointed. The next dealership I went to, they fell over themselves to offer me a test drive. So it's that lack of consistency, and this was within the same brand's network. So mixed messages there and different priorities.
Mm-hmm. So it is very diverse, isn't it? What you do experience. I think it's worth heading over if you more on this story from AM around what's come out from Sophos 3, because they do talk about obviously the EV sector and the experience of online visits around the EVs and obviously with ULEV and the emission registrations and things like this that start to happen. So I would urge you to head over to AM Online and have a look at the story that Tim Rose has pulled together from Sophos 3 there.
Yeah. So last story this week is also on AM Online, and the headline is ASC reveals car dealers' September profits rose £3,000. Which is good news. I mean, it's a good news story to end on, but there is a bit of context because September last year, so September 2018, there was actually a £20,000 slump at dealers as reported by ASE, and that was all down to the introduction of WLTP on the 1st of September of the plate change month. So just to give that a bit of context, but come on, it's good to see dealerships back in profit, because this September it wasn't an easy market. They worked hard to generate sales, so that's welcome news.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, again, back to what Stuart said on his thoughts around the sector challenges and thing that, that end of September, the big month of the year, really focus in terms of budget and profitability within that September new plate month has always been key for any franchise dealer. And we had, as you say, you referred to the WLTP impact last year. I mean, we know what the market did around registrations and the impact of WLTP, and the fourth quarter this year, slightly different challenges, and as Stuart referred to, that continual uncertainty and change in deadline around Brexit, and obviously the RDE introduction that we've mentioned on the show previously around that September. But I think you're right. I think, in fairness to, on the back of last year, which was a challenge, but I think for them to return into profitability as an average across the sector is great news. And hopefully, if they can do that with the current headwinds that we are facing and the challenges around supply from the new car market, then when we get back into some kind of certainty and some stability in both the economy and the political environment, then hopefully you can see this start to recover to volumes and numbers that we've seen previously.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So I think that's there's a lot more on that. It's worth again looking over to the story there. It is on AM Online again from Mike Jones from ASC. And like I say, I was with those guys the week before last, and head over there and have a look at some of the numbers, because they do go into, obviously, those, if you haven't seen them, the key ratio stats that they produce on a month by month basis. And it's worth having a look at the month on month and that roll in 12 months, and maybe go back further than 2018 just to sort of see where the market is headed, because I think 2018 and 2019 has certainly been a challenging period for these kind of numbers.
Yeah. So, don't forget to subscribe to Motor Trade Radio on iTunes, Google Play, Deezer, SoundCloud, YouTube, or just tune in to motortraderadio.com. I think last week I invented one called Soundgarden, but we're on that as well.
There's plenty to be. So if you've not heard of us, then you won't know, will you? But no, it's great this week. I'd try and keep it tight, because obviously the fantastic interview there with Stuart, and thanks for arranging that one, Curtis. It was very insightful, and I mean, Christ, he's got a lot going on, hasn't he, in the Trust Ford world?
Yeah, you know what? Spending 2 days with the Trust Ford guys was actually it was incredibly insightful. I learned a lot about the inner workings of the business, but there is a lot of sort of positivity out there, and they've got a clear idea on how they want to end the year and where they want to go next year. So hopefully that came out in the interview. So thanks very much to Stuart for joining us on the show.
Excellent. Well, I think that's it for this week. So again, anybody wants to come on and share some thoughts around activity within your business, or some data trends and insight that you may have, then please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'll gladly have you on at the start of the show and share some thoughts. And as Curtis says, we are everywhere within the social world to tune in, and please share and join in the podcast. So fantastic, and thanks again, Curtis, for everything.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next week.